Just outside Amsterdam in the Netherlands, there's a perfectly ordinary Dutch house and a family living their lives. A garden, a barn next door, but inside that barn, something extraordinary is happening. This isn't a tech campus, it's not a corporate data centre, it's a converted cow barn, and it's quietly controlling the movement of money for over 1 million people every minute of every day all around the world. The power cannot go off, and that's where Victron Energy comes in. Wietse Vint has been taking things apart and putting them back together since he was a child, soldering circuits at home, fixing school computers, setting up the first school network at 10 years old.
Just the simple stuff like at first a buzzer when you would wire would touch wire. So I would build little transistor radios or infrared gates, and I would wire up the stairs, for example. So my screen, my light would turn off when my parents came up the stairs.
That curiosity with hardware and software never left him. By 14, he'd talked a local computer shop into giving him a job. By 16, he'd registered his own business, so he could finally start sending invoices.
The day I turned 14, I was there again. Like, you promised me a job, I'm 14 now, I'd like that job, which I got.
Fast forward to today, and Wietse is running an app used by more than 1.1 million people around the world, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The app lets people transfer value to each other across the globe in seconds.
These people depend on our app functioning, and the app obviously depends on infrastructure. And there's a whole lot of data for us to store, to process, which we do in our own data center now.
And that data center sits right here in the old cow barn that's next to his house. Amsterdam data centers are busy places. Space is tight, costs are climbing, and electricity prices keep going up. Wietse had a different idea.
By having the data center here locally, we save a lot of time. We save a lot of money on electricity costs, but it comes at the responsibility of being able to keep it online.
But keeping your own data center online next to your house with no team of engineers on site is a serious undertaking. The answer was to build a system with so much redundancy that the risk of going dark became almost impossible. The property itself is substantial. 2 houses, an office, the data centre, a swimming pool, and at any given time up to 5 electric vehicles on charge. On a typical day, they're getting through around 600 kilowatt hours.
There's a baseline of roughly 20 kilowatts. So we're always doing 20 kilowatts, just the data center, keeping the data center running and the cooling running. During high workloads, it increases to, let's say, 25 kilowatts.
A colleague who'd lived off-grid in Australia first pointed Wietse towards Victron. He'd built his own home system using their equipment, and Wietse took notice. What started as a backup power idea grew into something far bigger.
He actually found Victron as a Dutch high-quality manufacturer of inverters. So he built his home setup, at which point I started looking at like a similar but larger system, which enabled me to think about like running the data center here and being able to charge EVs beyond our grid capacity.
They upgraded the grid connection too. When the house was built, it came with a 3-phase 25 amp supply. That wasn't enough. Wietse eventually got it increased to a 3-phase 80 amp connection, which allowed them to charge the battery banks properly and even sell energy back to the grid when prices are high. The man who helped install it all is Danny Marker from Electrotechnique. He's been coming here 1 day a week on average for 4 years.
This is the largest install I've done. It's a great job. I've been here for 4 years now, off and on. Biggest one next to this one is 45 kilowatts of storage. This is a storage of 540 kilowatts. So in terms of storage, it's outstanding big.
Together, they've built something that neither of them had done before at this scale. There are two separate systems. 96 solar panels in a 50% east, 50% west configuration are out in the field. They feed 6 MPPT RS 450-200 solar charge controllers, 3 10 kVA multi plus 2 and 72 5 kWh Life PO4 lithium batteries. These are treated as 3 different systems with their own Serbo GXs and screens. Their job is to provide 3 separate single-phase supplies to the main system. The main system in the server room has 54 solar panels on the roof of the barn in a 30-degree full south configuration. They feed 2 MPPT RS 450-200 solar charge controllers, 12 48-volt 10 kVA Quattro inverter chargers, create a solid 3-phase power supply with 4 inverters per phase. An 80 amp grid supply is fed to the property, but that is limited to 63 amps and has a separate Victron anti-islanding kit installed to protect the grid. That grid supply is combined with the 3 single phases from the other system and act as AC in on the Quattros. There is another Serbo GX controlling everything. This secondary main system provides power to the data centre, the cooling, the 2 houses, EV chargers and office. There is 540 kilowatt hours of battery storage and 150 solar panels in total on site. Danny says the system, with the calculations matching up, should be capable of running fully off-grid for around 10 months of the year. And then there are the EV charging stations.
4 are private and 1 is for the company, so all his workers can load up their cars if they need to. The system already knows how the cars are being discharged, so the system knows how much they need to charge the cars up to 100% again.
Over 1 million users depend on this system, and because the app is running in every time zone, there's no maintenance window. It simply cannot go down.
If everything were to fail, then we have hundreds of thousands of users who would have higher latency, if even available, connections to our app. That would be problematic.
Wietse doesn't leave that to chance. The Victron setup provides continuous backup. There's also a separate UPS giving the servers 25 minutes of standalone power, which buys enough time to bypass the system entirely for maintenance if needed. And if the grid fails, they can run off solar and stored energy alone.
It's a great peace of mind to know that even if something would happen to the grid, we can still run, charge the cars, power the houses and mostly power the data center.
Wietse has built a miniature clone of the entire system in his basement. Every firmware update, every configuration change gets tested there first before it touches the live system.
In the basement at the house I have like a miniature clone of everything. So that's 3 Victron Multiplus, but also an entire server rack. Everything that's running in production right here is in the basement as well, just less of it, smaller.
He also built his own custom forecasting software because even Victron's dynamic system management wasn't quite tailored enough for a setup this complex.
We're a software company, so we build our own forecasting software, taking the solar into account, taking the state of charge of the different cars into account. We know the baseline, we know the load, we know the grid prices.
Even the heat that the servers throw off doesn't go to waste.
We're taking sun onto the solar panels. We're sending that to the inverters, turning it into AC, powering the data center, which generates a lot of heat. That air actually gets suctioned into a system that injects it into water in a coolant circuit, which goes to a heat exchange, which goes to the pools. And we reuse even the heat from the servers to heat the pool.
A build like this doesn't happen without a few hard lessons along the way. The system went through 3 major iterations before arriving at where it is today.
The second setup was also 36 pylon tags. The battery stayed the same, and we upgraded the inverters to a multiplus 2 times per phase, 15 kVA. And then we broke the system down, and then we upgraded it for the third time to 4 Quattros, 10 kVA per phase.
The data center, where the main Victron setup is as well, used to be just a barn for the cows, but never really disconnected the main pipe, which at some point just broke. So that flooded the entire floor. So one thing we learned is just to move everything up against the wall.
Each challenge was a lesson, and Danny kept coming back.
I am still amazed that he didn't run away screaming because of all the changes needed throughout the entire build and all the iterations of and learnings. It really worked well, where we would both look into the hardware and all the system requirements and limitations, and I would look at the software and how it would all tie up together, and he would look at safety and making sure that it was all well connected.
Most of the time when he thinks of something, he thinks it at night. So in the morning I wake up and I've got a ton of messages in my phone, like, we're gonna do this, this, this. How do you think about it? And do you think it's possible? Or he thinks it's possible, and then together we figure it out.
Danny has only ever installed Victron energy equipment, and after 4 years on this project, his view is clear.
We're gonna continue with Victron. It's just a nice product.
I would also choose Victron again. It's just very high quality gear on a hardware and a software level. It's well documented. There are a lot of resources online, a lot of experiences from people as well. And it allows me to read everything the system is doing and also control the system in whatever way makes sense for us. The fact that I can put up the kettle in the evening and that I know that I'm off grid and that it's the solar that reached our solar panels that went through the system I designed into batteries, which then feeds the data center and the houses and allows me to make tea from stored energy from the sun. I mean, that's pretty cool. I'm basically living the geek dream, right? So this is one big playground to me. At the same time, it's very serious, right? We're storing deadly amounts of energy, and I have the responsibility to keep the system working. I have the responsibility to fix whatever needs fixing. I'm very much aware that if at 4 o'clock an alarm goes off, it's my responsibility to deal with it. Which does happen at times. At the same time, at 4 o'clock, I get my bathrobe, I walk over, and I fix whatever needs fixing, opposed to rushing to the car, driving to Amsterdam.
Over 1 million people around the world are moving money through a server rack in an old Dutch barn, powered by the sun, backed up by 540 kilowatt hours of storage, and watched over by a man in his bathrobe at 4 in the morning. It turns out that energy independence and an app that never sleeps are a very good fit.